Greetings, one and all. New Pragmatic Nation. Chris Courtney here. So glad to have you along for another edition of the Feedback Loop. It's post Yang Gang Day. Tip one out for the guy. Big Andrew Yang fan here. Hate to see him go, but those are elections, folks. If you want to know more about the Math Hat and UBI, feel free to DM me. I've got a lot of thoughts on that. Actually, I had some questions about my positions on that related to automation and design, and because with automation rapidly occurring in society, the logical question is, well, hey Chris, do you think automation is going to replace designers? And actually, it's funny because I've got a book here, and golly gee, if I could find it, I've just got too many books here, but there's a book that came out last year called The Future of Design. And it lays out that artificial intelligence will play a significant role in design in the coming years. Will it be next year? Will it be 5 years? Will it be 10 years? Don't know. There are some ways in which AI will definitely impact your workflows, and I actually believe there are some functions related to AI that aren't even really AI. They're more just like simple algorithms that will change how we really apply what we know about design to be customized to the individual person. So the reality of what we show people changes based on the person. But there's still going to be a core designer involved. And I really see automation and AI being a partner with designers. This isn't going to be a sort of a call center where somebody calls up and says, I want design, and the AI figures out what that person wants. And that's because computers in general are really good at handling things that can be replicated over and over and over again. And as you know, going through the UX program, it's very hard to find the right solution for that particular market, because oftentimes design is just it's messy problem solving. It's trying to wrap your hands around a big mess. And once the designer has cleaned up the mess, then I think AI probably gets involved. But it's going to take a designer, particularly UX. UX is particularly safe. I think in a lot of ways UX is the safest of the design fields, because the problems are so messy that it would be just very difficult to write for that sort of scenario. Visual design and expression, I think, is not completely off guard, or not completely out of bounds, but I do think that that options will be presented back, and it'll be like picking of the options. And then finally, front end, I think, is probably the most likely to be impacted by AI, because it's a set of rules. It's like, okay, I use CSS to do a thing, and I can teach a computer that. Will it happen right away? No, it won't happen right away. Will it happen to all design? No. There are some areas. Remember that AI and automation come about because there's this great cost savings. Okay. Well, there's not that many. When you look at the workforce, there are far more developers than there are designers, and because of that, the cost savings to replace all the designers is just significantly lower than the cost savings to replace all the developers. So I think it will be later, and I don't think it'll be complete. I do think that if anything, there will be fewer bad designers, because AI will eliminate the need for them. But to eliminate all designers, in many cases, I doubt we'll ever get, in any industry, we'll never replace everybody. there will always be some level of employment for everybody involved, and we are years off. This is much of the work that we're doing here is a little different than delivering taking your order online or taking your order at the local fast food restaurant. We're tackling things that don't fit neatly into boxes. So if you find yourself doing a job that you feel like could fit neatly into a box, that's an automated task that's just ripe for being automated away. But if you're dealing with messy problems, if you're tired at the end of the day because the problems are just so messy, and it's like, God, this is a tough problem. That's probably not a problem that AI is going to go after because it's just too bespoke. So that's my spiel. I had some questions on that, so I wanted to jump on that. Wanted to give a shout out to the Yang Gang. UBI. We talk about UBI and Universal Basic Income. UBI isn't going to help us out as designers. It's going to help out people that they're working the fast food jobs that are going to be automated away. They're working the Uber. They're the Uber driver that isn't going to exist because we're going to have different forms of transportation that replace the need for humans to drive around the corner. But tackling design, it's a little messier than that. So, but I'm a big fan of UBI because I like to lift all boats. I like to think that having groceries on the table for every kid that goes to school with my daughter is probably a good thing for society as a whole. So, hey, political rant, we're complete. Also, another question that came up, and this was related to, I'm going to just go ahead and share my screen. This one was related to not that. We'll get right back to that. Not that either. Hey, it's related to that. And I'm going to just move my screens around real fast. Had somebody reach out and say, hey, Chris, I thought you were doing the new monthly thing, but I haven't heard you talk about it in a while. And there's a reason. And mainly it's that I am head down in curriculum right now. I am not in promotion mode. I thought I'd be in promotion mode right now, but I'm not. I'm writing curriculum, and I'm really enjoying some of the stuff that we're coming up with. It was so much fun working with Luigi earlier this week, and I've got a meeting with Eve later today, working through interface design and seeing that work hitting the road with students. That's been a lot of fun. But for those of you wondering, hey Chris, are you taking students? Sure, the doors are always open for students. You don't see me posting any ads or talking about it too much because frankly, we're doing fine. But that doesn't mean that your friends who somebody may be looking around for a place where they can learn how to get into this industry and learn how to elevate their design skills. This is the house for it. And at $2.99 a month, I still say that this is the best deal in design education. And it's, if you send them over here to newpragmatic.com/mentorship, anybody you send my way that actually signs up for mentorship with me, I will repay that favor. So in the form of a $25 Amazon gift card. That's something else that I don't really talk about. But if you have a friend that you're sending this way, make sure that they share that with me. That hey, Gerald said that your design program's awesome and I want to sign up. Well, Gerald's gonna get a little bonus because that I'd rather put the money in your hands than Twitter's or Facebook's or LinkedIn. I'd rather just give it to you because you're doing the work. Those other platforms are really hit and miss. So that said, let's jump in because there's a few things that there's a few questions that are hanging out today. One's from, we've got Katie in here in the feedback loop. We've got Eve in the feedback loop. We've got Tagil with a question about Flexbox. So I want to jump into all these things. So let's go ahead and get this underway. And I'm going to start over here with Katie. And Katie is working on her meal kit delivery user stories. Okay, so this means that Katie just wrapped up with personas, and she's done affinity mapping. And in personas, she has identified a couple of scenarios. And the scenarios for Jamie and Peter, we saw those yesterday. The big issue yesterday was, hey, we had typos in the personas, and we just don't want those. But she had good scenarios. You could directly map back to the affinity map her priority guide. Like the things that she had made a priority, they were present. And that was what was really important when you looked at the the personas from the affinity map. But here we have a missing piece. And the missing piece has nothing to do with Jamie or Peter. She's created user stories, and for Jamie, it's I want to know how many calories are in my meals, so that I can track my eating habits without having to weigh out my food. I want to plan out my meals for the week by the Sunday before, so that I can focus on making my children's meals during the week. Now, these are pretty verbose, and they're very specific, but they are scenarios. Okay, when you're writing scenarios, you tend to get into the details. So I'm not against that, but there's some core user stories missing here. Nowhere in here am I seeing things like, I need to sign up for an account. I need to view meal options. I want, I get, task. Healthy food can be boring to eat. I need variety if I'm going to stay eating. I need variety if I'm going to stay eating healthy. So, like, there's some user stories here that, the task, healthy food can be boring to eat, that's not a very good task. I think it's just it's a poorly written user story. The concept that you're trying to get to is there, but it's not resonating. But the bigger thing is, I need to create a new sheet, and I'm just gonna duplicate this one. So that's copy of sheet 1. We're gonna come back over here, and I'm gonna name this new existing. I'm just going to say new users, okay? So this is new users, and, obviously it's new. I'm going to clear these away on the new sheet, and the task. I want to create an account so that I can participate in the service. Without an account, you can't order the food. And I realize this seems like such a menial task, but when I'm going through and determining, okay, what needs to be built, the things that get built are the things that you've written down. Because as we're mapping through here, it's not always going to be just you sitting down and creating, all the tasks. At some point, you are going to have to delegate off, and that means that you're going to have to bring somebody into the fold, a developer, another designer, a team of developers, a product manager, whatever. You're going to need to bring these people in, and they need to know exactly what needs to be done. Because, frankly, I'll be honest with you, every project that you work on, you will have people that will have differing levels of interest. Some people are going to do exactly what you tell them to do. Other people will do exactly what you tell them to do, and then they'll grouse when something is missing. Hey, I understand that Jamie wants to order food, but there's no way to sign in on this page. All right? And missing these really small details undermines the authority you have. Okay? So I need you to be thinking broader and really atomic. Like, okay, so yes, Jamie wants to plan out her meals by the Sunday before. Okay? Okay, great. So what would have to exist for Jamie to do that? Um, uh, I and this is really as a new user. So role, instead of user, I'll just say role. As a new user, I want to create an account. So I can participate in the service. As a new user, I want to schedule my meals. So I can save time through the week. Now, schedule my meals in advance. So what that means is I need some sort of scheduling apparatus. And, you know, you'll break that down even further, because when you get over to story mapping, you'll have to say, okay, so how would I schedule my meals? Well, I would schedule my meals by having a calendar. Okay, well, now I need to build a calendar. And this informs what you will eventually design. Okay? It's very hard to design I need to eat quickly over my lunch break. Okay? So I need to have my meals ready before I leave for work. What that actually maps to is as a new user, I want my meals delivered to my home so that I want my meals delivered to my home so I can carry one to work, carry a meal, so I can pack a meal quickly each day. Now, the question is that a new user task? I don't necessarily know that it is. This could very easily be, and I'll duplicate this. This could be an existing user. All right? And an existing user, I've got new user. So I'm going to say I don't need to create an account if I'm an existing user, right? Or another way to say this is as a returning user. A returning user might want to schedule their meals. They also might want to, I want to pause my meals for a week. I want to pause my meals for a week because, and you could write this over here, because I work, because I travel and need the flexibility. And actually, this is getting too detailed because they could need to pause for a million reasons. But I want to pause my meals for a week because I need the flexibility. That's all you really need there. I want to schedule my meals in advance, so I can save time through the week. I want my meals delivered to my home, so I can pack a meal quickly each day. Now, those are existing user tasks. Create an account is not. I want my meals delivered to my home. That's probably not a new user task. I want my meals scheduled in advance. This might be I want to view meal options. So I can make an informed decision when signing up. Okay. So these are like the really core things that allow you to eventually get to these. All right. But without these things, I can't really address the scenarios. All right. So, Katie, what I really want to see from you is I want to see us go through and get down to the atomic level. What are the things that have to exist for these things to happen? Okay? And if you can do that, then you're going to be in a great position to move forward, because then you're going to basically know what content you need to create, what micro copy you need to write, what stories need to go on to what needs to go into the story map, because to build a functioning prototype, you have to have these things in place. So I'm going to leave that for you. I think that is it's a pretty core task, but it's something that you really need to do for every project that you work on. There is no particular task too small to denote here. And as I said before, the only thing that that gets built is what is noted. All right, and this is really part of the communication process with the rest of your team. All right. With that said, let's go ahead and jump over here into Eve's latest. So Eve is on the hierarchy project, hierarchy and spacing. Okay, and like Luigi yesterday, or maybe it was Monday, she's been tasked with working through this set of images and determining. So for the first one, this is nature. So it says page 1 nature, and for the second one, we have page 1 bridges. All right. So one interesting thing, Eve, is that we've gone edge to edge on both of them. Okay. And I don't necessarily think that is good or bad. When those grids are there to give you some sort of sense of structure. But what I do like is the fact that there is a clear lead for both of these, and also I like the fact that you have paid close attention to the goal of editing for the desired content. Like, this is bridges. You did include the natural bridge, but that's okay because it's a natural bridge. You didn't include the shoreline or the flower or the ocean tide. At the same time, over here, you included the natural bridge, but it is, again, a natural bridge. So it was the one that could go across, okay? It could be in either one. Here you've got this really majestic photo of the waterfall, and I think that's really, really a beautiful image. The one thing I would say, if I was going to push this forward, and I often will do this, I'm gonna bring this over so that we can look at it. When we're designing for a grid, and again, grids, frankly, is the next exercise. Grids aren't this exercise. But if I'm designing here in a grid, I can do this a couple of different ways. One, I can obviously say, hey, this big image here is going to be the big image, right? And then I could come back with these and say, okay, well, you folks are going to constrain yourself to that space. And you might be wondering, okay, well, what does this mean, Chris? Bottom of the browser window. Well, bottom of the browser window is just telling you that down here at the bottom is, in your browser, something's going to cut off, okay? And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with this cutting off. Like, basically, if we blew this up, and this actually would cut off a little lower than that, or a little higher than that. But it looks kind of like that, okay? And the great thing is that encourages you to scroll. There are other ways that we could lay these out. I do like the fact that you kind of you tried to get these to all square up, and that's fine. That isn't actually required. You could have just as easily came through and said, okay, well, this one's gonna go here, and this one's gonna go there, and maybe I'll line the top items up, and maybe this one goes here, and I'm gonna bring this one in as well so that these can both go up. That'd be fine. I think in that case maybe these switch, like, and again, I'm just trying to create a more interesting design based on what you have. But that's similar to what you've done here, but you've made a clear decision. Some of these are going to be on the grid. The big one's not. Okay? So that's one way that you could have mixed this. Another way that you could have mixed this, and again, I'm looking more at options rather. These are all what I would call gray zones. There's not a right answer to this. It is did you create a focal point? And you did. Now I'm just looking at, okay, what else could we do? And what else we could do is we could say, okay, well, this one's going to stick to the grid, and these are going to act as a unit and go larger. And you will find in the information design exercise that is coming up soon for you that this is using Gestalt principles, which is Gestalt says, I'm going to take and group things together based on how they're organized. So I'm going to view these as a unit, and I'm going to view that as a unit. And what's interesting here is you have 6 images that are suddenly competing with the one large image because of the way that our eyes group things. Yes, that image by itself is still larger, but these 6 below are not. And the thing that I love about when we start getting into interface design, it's much like UX. Every one of you had a different approach to the project that you were working on. But at the same time, there are different solutions based on your project. So I'm really just trying to react to what you're bringing to the table. But just know that I would always try to at least get one element established on the grid and then move the rest. This is a very, if I had to go like at my core, this is probably where I would land. All right. I would try to go big into the edges on the large image and make the other things subservient. Yesterday, if you watched me work with Rebecca on her presentation, she actually had an interview today. A lot of that follows these principles. So she had images, and they were kind of like trying to find a place, and I was like, okay, go big with this one, okay? And that was the same idea. You went big, go bigger, all right? Same thing here. This is fine, but these 3 images have the same basic height, and they're beginning to work as a unit against this one, okay? Now that does not mean that there's anything necessarily wrong with this one. The question I oftentimes look at this and I go, okay, everything's horizontal except for this one. Is there something different that I could do? Like this is horizontal, this is horizontal. Is there something different that I could do to create vertical movement? And honestly, if I was wanting vertical movement, I could probably do something with one of these 3 over here to get vertical movement happening. But that, again, nothing is incorrect about either of these. You have created hierarchy. I just think that when you begin utilizing the grid to gives some form to the design, I think you really begin to create some very interesting designs that have order to them. Okay, looking over here at the next one, the strategic use of space. This is very clean. I do want to, I'm going to bleed ahead again into information design, and we talk in information design about how these elements read together. This unit that you have right now, I really feel functions much better when we get these elements together rather than apart. And now if you center that up, it's like, yeah, great, it holds the space, but look at the difference in how these read. Okay? This reads as a unit. These are acting as three separate pieces. All right? So I don't, the logic here says, oh, well, Chris wants everything even. I want it to be even here, 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 and here. Top and bottom, yes. In between, no. I want that to be a unit. Okay? So that's something you grow into. That's something you learn. You're learning it now, frankly. So I, we'll talk about that later though, because you do have a call coming up, and I want to make sure that we have something to talk about on the call. Over here on emphasis left, this is great. Okay, where I was giving Luigi crap about he had the text going over the girl's face. The girl is looking directly at the type. All right. This might and another thing you kind of picked up on the idea of, I've got this grid and I've got this bottom this is bottom of the browser window. Okay, so this is beginning to feel like it's planned to be this way. If I was going to carry this and take it further, I am what I am. I try to always take it further. I would grab this image and I would drag it up. Well, I did something wrong. Let me undo. Sorry, sometimes I just need what happened? Let's turn on my guides here, see what I got. So, yes. Oh, that's bottom of the browser window, and that's the line. Oh, okay. You added a tint to this, and that's fine. That's not bad at all. My thought here, what I was really trying to do, I was trying to go bigger with her, so she's more central in the frame. And then I was going to let's bring your tint back down. But the other thing that I was wanting to do was I was wanting to get in here, back here on this navigation, this rectangle, and I was going to say, hey, you know what? Make that 90% so that we begin to see through it. And while we're here, let's hide that grid for a second. And now I've got this transparency that's allowing the image to go behind the navigation. This is something that, again, as we stretch into information design, I want you to think about, how can I get these elements to interact? I don't necessarily have to have them stop immediately. By the way, this is referred to as a fixed navigation. All right, so when we're writing CSS later, you'll say position fixed, and that's how you'll make that happen. You'll have the nav bar go over the image, and then we can add a transparency to it, and it'll do basically this. Okay, I realize this. I'm dropping a lot of disparate things that are way ahead of you in the program, but I'm trying to seed for the future, because once we get there, I think this is going to be so much easier to understand if we just start talking about it now. And that's one of the reasons why It's one of the reasons why I shifted the program from a course by course by course thing to just mentorship, because I want to talk about it all. I want to talk about everything holistically. I want us to start having these conversations without putting up a barrier between, like, oh, this is a UX thing, or oh, this is an interface thing, or oh, this is a front end thing. No, let's just talk about it all. Let's talk about it all as we go. And you're progressing, I think. But again, there's a little bit of information design here that could push it forward. You had the right concept. I really think that this is the right concept. But when it comes to images, there's a lot of dead space over here. I really want to try to maximize that. Okay, so make it bigger, go bolder. If I show you, this, this image had a lot more to the top and right, and I cropped it. Well, why did I crop it? Because I want it to get myself out of the middle of it, because in the middle I would have been right here. Additionally, you can go to the home page. Similar scenario, okay? And this one had a lot more to the left, but I cropped it to bring the group of people in, okay? So when I coach on like imagery usage and whatnot, I'm putting my money right where my mouth is, because this is exactly what I would do designing an interface. And oddly enough, this organization is basically what you've seen me do with New Pragmatic on the homepage and on the mentorship page. So pretty good job there. A couple of ways you could push it forward, though, and that's the big thing that I want us to take away from this, is that these are all solutions, but almost everything that we do, especially when we start getting into the visual design, it could be leveled up. Okay, so nothing's perfect. Everything can be worked on, and let's embrace that madness. All right, so now I want to go over here to Tejal, because she had a great question about Flexbox, and I can't tell you enough that CSS Tricks Complete Guide to Flexbox is my go-to. All right, a lot of times I will say, oh, I want to go over to Mozilla CSS Flexbox, and I'll go over here, and Mozilla's great. I love Mozilla. Basic concepts of Flexbox. Flexbox moves right to left or up and down, not at the same time. Unlike Grid goes both ways at the same time. And I think actually this does a good job. But the thing that's interesting about this, I think it does a better job of displaying what the hell's going on. And it also breaks it down into, these are things that are on the container around the items. These are properties specific to the items inside the container or the children. And to kind of walk us through that, I've created a simple UL-LI structure. We've all seen this in HTML. And I haven't done anything to it aside from add a LI to the back, add a little color to the background so that we could see the list items. And Tejal has a project she's working on right now where she's got some images and she's wanting to make them equally spaced. So I want to work on this with that in mind. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to come over here and I want to say display, not in line, but I'm going to say display flex. And immediately that shrinks everything up, okay? The next thing I want to do is I want to say display, well, not display, what is the, I'm so focused on Flexbox right now, list style type. List style type none. If you're following along, that gets rid of the dots that were there before. And I'm going to change this to our favorite yellow because it's a little hard to read as green. I'm also going to adjust the size of this. I'm going to put some padding on each of these So we'll just say 20 pixels. I do not have my rims set up at this point, so I'm just using pixels. So there's 20 pixels. Now, as I stated before, there are properties that assign themselves to, there are properties that belong to the container, and then there are properties that belong to the children. And the properties that I think are most important for you and your usage, Tagil, are the properties that belong to the container. And here, the container is the UL, okay? The list items inside are the children. But here, I'm going to say justify content space between. And the space between here specifically is everything that's inside of that UL. If I want to see the UL, I'll say background green. And that'll show us the UL. And I've got like some, it looks like I've got some margin to the beginning of that. So let's say margin 0 to see if I can get that to, what is that? That's interesting. Inspect element. Padding 20, yep. It's really interesting. I think that I remember what this is. Float. No, I don't want float. I don't like it that that's not lining up right with the right with the beginning. That doesn't make any damn sense. Where is that extra space coming from? Oh, well, I haven't zeroed it out, dummy. Sorry. Let's get a reset in here. There we go. I'm like, why is that coming in? Oh, it's because it's the browser. You gotta make sure you have a reset when you're doing these things. So anyway, there's space between. So space between. There are other options that we have available to us, and let's go down here. So we have flex start, flex end, center, space between, space around, space evenly. So if I wanted to try space evenly, that makes it, and then if I said, okay, the width of this container is 50%, space evenly is just going to space evenly within the 50%, or it's going to space evenly within the 80%, okay? And this is important to you because you have widths that will move around. If you use space evenly, it should pay attention to that. But you have another bit here that's a little different. Inside of each of yours, you have an image. And I'm going to do something really quickly that will probably set off some alarm bells for most of you. But like, what is he doing? He's putting stuff inside the stuff inside the LI. You can do that. There's nothing against putting styles inside of the LI. But I'm going to add an image now, and I want to get an asset here. I'm going to grab this 1999 Prince album. I just keep these things handy. You can see that because I have Flexbox applied, it's maintaining the size across. Okay, so if I decided to say, okay, UL image is going to be width 50%, it's just going to be 50% of the LI space. Okay, so that's probably not great. If I said 100 pixels, then it's constrained, and it's simply changing the width that's assigned to that li. Now, if I said text align center, everything is centered up. So now I could come in and say, okay, li, instead of margin 0, let's say margin 10 pixels, 0, 0, 0, because I want to zero out the others. And, oops, I did not want to do that. I want it to, I forgot that that's not the li at this point. That is now the h1. And now I can say padding, or no, sorry, margin top, 20 pixels. And that'll buy some space between these. And this is beginning to take the form of, what your design really looks like, Tejal, in that you have content, and then you have images, and you need these things to really align for you. And with just a little bit of Flexbox, you can get that to happen for you. And of course, I can. I don't want to do that. I can go back into assets. I could grab some other URLs and pop them in there if I wanted to, and that'd be fine. This is controversy. And then, if I decided I wanted to say, this is instead 200 pixels, Flexbox is going to accommodate that. And notice that space evenly just soaks up the space between, and just immediately, upon changing the size of images, it pays attention and adjusts the entire row accordingly. So you have a design that's very similar to this. I'm going to go ahead and I'll change this to 100% width, just so that we can see it. And I will I'll drop this in for you inside of feedback loop. So this is the Flexbox example for Tejal. And there you have that. All right. And that's it. That's going to do it for today. I really appreciate you folks riding along with me. Thanks for all the submissions today. Rebecca, I look forward to. Rebecca's back from her interview. She just got back from Tel Aviv. So I look forward to reading your updates. I know that you are exhausted. She worked her tail off through the evening getting prepped for that interview, and I'm sure she said thanks for all the feedback that I gave her, but at some point you're like, Chris, stop giving me feedback. But that's why you're here. You're here for me to just keep pushing you a little bit further. But without further ado, that's it for the feedback loop for this edition. New Pragmatic Nation, I'm Chris Courtney, and I will see you later. Take care.